All right, good morning, everybody. This is the June 8th, 2021 CAPN office hours. We're all here to talk about fun cluster API provider nested and virtual cluster projects and things like that. And I'm super stoked to see all of you. And as always, this is recorded, so don't say anything you don't want to be posted to YouTube because it will definitely be up there. We have an incredibly light agenda, I believe. I'm going to first start us off by just opening the audience to, or opening to the audience. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up real quick?
Yeah, I think it's okay. You can just describe the process about the releasing first.
Sweet. All right. I'm going to move on to the agenda then, and it's just going to be solely that until somebody else adds something in here. All right. So over the last week or so, I've been trying to put together all the pieces to make this all happen. I'm going to I think I maybe will actually go walk through some of it just to kind of disseminate the information about how this works, because Charles and Faye, both of you can do this. Well, actually, anybody can technically get all of these pieces kicked off, and it's probably a good thing for everybody to understand how it works, because there's quite a lot of pieces that make this all work together, and a little bit of it's kind of hard to find the right information to make this happen. So I will let me pull this over and see what's on my screens. All right, I'm going to share my screen and pull things over into it as I go. Can everybody see this wonderful agenda doc?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so it's technically not working. It was supposed to be. Something happened and I'll have to debug it. And so you're going to kind of see a little bit of the debugging process at the same time as kind of seeing how it all works. So to make this all possible, we actually had to do 3 different repositories worth of work. So Faye and Charles, you're both now a part of the owners file of those. Thank you so much for joining. Congrats as well for joining the Kubernetes org. Woohoo! Now you can be owners in both orgs, not just Kubernetes SIGs. So to kind of walk through this, let's go over to the test infra project, and I'll also open up the Kate's project. So under here, I'm going to first start by showing where things actually live and how this all gets put together. So first and foremost, we basically end up with a handful of pieces. So we actually get a GCP project created for us when you actually go through some of the workflow that I had to set up in here. So first and foremost, we ended up having to go through and set up a new images directory, which will have where we actually do our promotions of images. Richard, it looks like you just joined as well. We're just walking through some of the process that we're going through to actually get our first release out of this. And I'm kind of disseminating some of that information to make this all possible. I don't know if you'd like to just to jump in here since you joined a little bit late. If you'd like to give yourself an introduction, we usually allow new folks to do that.
Hi, everyone. Richard Case. I work on the Kappa provider, but really kind of increasingly interested in the nested provider. So thought I'd join and listen in.
Cool. We're stoked to have you. I've seen your commits across a lot of different projects that I think we've crossed paths on. So stoked to see you checking out what we're doing over here. All right, continue to go back to this. So basically, you go set up a project in here. You'll notice we have no images in here, and this is because we're actually not promoting any images. So you only ever declare images in this file when you actually want them to be promoted from our staging repositories to our staging registries to our actual production registries, which we are not going to do immediately. I want to get this process rolling on our staging releases first and make sure we validate it, because once something gets promoted to the production registries, you can't overwrite it. It's there for good, and that's all it is. And basically we just continue to add into this. And so just to show what that actually looks like in another world, I'll go to Kappa since Richard's here, and you can actually see this is what this will eventually look like when we actually have promoted images. So all of our tags will get pushed here, and we'll have the SHA declaring what it actually looks like, or what it actually is for that release. So just a little bit of what's going to happen next once we go through this process. Taking a step back, we go through and we also had to go and create this image promoter project, which just declares the actual service accounts that it's supposed to use to promote these images so that it can get pushed throughout the whole world. I assume this will help the folks that are on the Alibaba side of things in China. They'll be able to actually pull this Asia image, hopefully, maybe. I don't know exactly, but I'm hoping that's the case. To continue to add into this, I'm going to go find my other pull request because I had a handful that I had to do to get this all working. We basically, or actually only two. So this is how we actually created the project. And you only really have to do this once, but I think it's nice to talk about what goes on in case we ever pull VC out into another place at some point. We would have to go through the same exact project. But in essence, we registered a Google group, which has the 5 of us that, or the 4 of us that are all in the owners for that. And so anybody that's in this can actually go and look at the GCP project. You'll get access to go and read into it, which is where I'll show you how we can kind of debug things if you don't want to go the prow route. You'll see we also added in for the ensure staging storage project. We had to go add this, which is going to go and be the shell scripts that folks are going to run that actually have the admin privileges to go make those accounts. And then we had to set up the actual images and the promotions. So once you do that, somebody from the Kate's repo that actually has owner's privileges can go and run this script, and it goes and generates the whole project for you. And then after some time, everything is initialized and set up for you to start working. When I go back, you can now see there's a lot more pieces. I'll show this again. There's a lot more pieces in here. Now we have an audit lifecycle that gets kicked off, and it periodically shows all of the different pieces that are being run out of our project. So you don't really have to have permissions to see inside the Google Cloud project or platform, which I'll just really quickly show what that actually looks like. It's basically going to look like this, where you actually have access to go see all the pieces that are making all of this project fully function. And I was specifically debugging the cloud build stuff by being able to go to here. So again, if you're in that Google group, you have access to this. If you're not, sorry, you'll just be able to see it from this side of things. There are some ways that you can kind of look into the billing aspects and what actually goes on. There's a lot of cool tools that I never even knew about. So I'm pretty stoked on some of the stuff. Anyways, so this runs periodically and kind of audits our usage and make sure that we're not doing crazy things and provisioning things out of whack. From here, I'm going to go over to the test infra repo, and I'll go over to my pull requests that are in here, and you'll see that there are a handful that we just put in to make this all happen. So we had the initial one, which is we've already added all the periodic builds so that we could actually test for flakes outside of the actual pushes, which folks already reviewed and actually helped on that. I think that was Charles, you did that. We also we added in this new image builder project. And so this specifically goes into this config jobs image pushing Kate's staging cluster API. And all of the images that are built from any cluster API provider, any cluster API project are actually built in here. So you can see it's pretty simple. It's basically saying we want to build this project. We're going to name it the post, and it's going to be push images. You can add any annotations you want into this. All these things are pre-built test grid dashboards that you can go look. And then what we had to do is declare what branches we want to build. So now anytime something is merged into main, you get an image built and it's pushed to staging repositories. Anytime something's pushed to a release dot something, that'll actually get an image built for it. And then anytime we push a tag that's going to be v0 such and such semver formatted, we'll actually get another build. And this is just going to go and say, hey, I want to use this project. I'm going to push any of the logs and extra artifacts to this bucket. And we're going to be passing through the actual pull base ref so that you know what the branch that this is coming from. Makes sense so far? Cool. Now going over to Cluster API, or sorry, to CapN, we have a handful of pieces. And a lot of this was pre-set up. Vince isn't on the phone, but when he originally helped do the template build up, not this template, but bringing over all of the CAPI related components to make all of this work fast, he basically set these things up for us. So we had a cloud build .yaml. And so cloud build relates to cloud build within the actual Google Cloud project platform. And so this gets kicked off and uses a specific machine type. Didn't have to change anything in here. This was just set up and configured, and we just used it. And so you'll see this calls a make target. So we're saying entry point is make. We're going to pass in that build, that pull base ref, and we're going to set that we want the get tag to come through. And then we're just going to call release staging. So in a handful of pull requests back, I kind of was toying with this, and I had to do a couple changes to it over the last couple of days to make it possible. But in the make file, what we're actually doing is release staging. Is we're going to call release staging on this, and this is going to loop through the Docker build all, push all, and then make all of the alias tags for us, which is going to push all of the manifest into the actual OCI images. And so we go through, and build all goes and actually builds all of the architectures, which I can find in here is build all, which is going to loop through all arches. And it's going to, in essence, build the infrastructure and then build the control plane. Super simple. So build this, pass in the arch so that we can actually build for ARM, for x86, so on and so forth. And I think these are all listed at the top somewhere. Yeah, so we're going to build for ARM, AMD 64, ARM 64, PPC 64, and S390X. And so it loops through all those things and builds them, and then again does the push all, and then it goes and does what I was talking about before, which is the release tag, which is going to go and say use G-Cloud container images and add the tags in there so that they're actually set up. And that's pretty much the whole process. Now there are some problems. I'm still working through it. Apparently, I thought I had this fixed this morning, but what ends up happening is once something is merged, you'll see we're looking at main. Sorry about that zoom. You'll get checks added to any pull request that's merged into here. So we can go look at this, and this is how you can debug it. And this is in essence what I'm going to be doing the rest of the day to make sure that this is actually working for us. But if you go through here, you'll see everything that's actually being done. In a typical situation, you wouldn't see a lot. You'd see this output, and that's it. It only when it fails does it emit all of the rest of this. And this is exactly what you expect. It's the makefile running release staging, and at the bottom you'll see whatever's going on. So my problems are here that I just need to go make sure that some files are actually added to the repository properly, I think. Yeah, so the release tagging side of things was broken, and I'll get that fixed. But in essence, we will have a release this week. Sorry for taking a little long time on actually getting that worked out, but there's a lot of pieces to make this all happen. And by the end of, I think probably today, I should be able to have that fully working for us. And we'll have a release that we can actually start to play with and see how it functions for folks. So.
Yeah, very cool. So Chris, one question. So what is so I assume only a few guys with certain privileges can do this release, right?
Anybody can make the pull requests. And we basically just need to go through. Actually, that's a good point. There is a document that declares how to do the full release cycle. So for creating the tag, only the people in the owner's files, so the 4 of us, so Charles, Faye, and myself, can go and actually do that. Sorry, let me share my screen one more time. Sorry, I lost which window I'm trying to share now. Okay, yeah, good call. So in here, there is a releases document that kind of declares the main steps that we have to do. So anybody can make a pull request into release main, or sorry, into releases .1.0. Typically what that's supposed to be meant for is cherry picking things that got missed in a specific release. So I just had Vince merge this because I thought main was going to pass, and I kind of jumped in front of it. But in essence, what I ended up having to do, the last thing that caught me this morning, was I had the wrong registries in here. So I had to change this because the project doesn't actually have provider in it. It just has nested. And so to look at what this actually looked like, this was into main. And because main was failing and release 1.0 was failing, we cherry picked it into that release branch. So anytime you've got something that you're like, oh, this is actually broken in the current version that is released, and we need to add something into it, you can go do the pull request into main and then create another cherry pick pull request that goes into whatever release you actually want that to get kicked off into. So anybody can do that. that's not that, and we just as owners need to approve those pull requests and make sure that the code goes to both places, main so that it's obviously tracking, and then the new release that it's supposed to be affected in. For the full releases, under release.md, you'll see that we need to do this properly. We need to create a pull request, or I mean an issue that's going to track whatever release we're going to do. Then we all need to LGTM this, which we didn't technically do, but I'll show you that pull request so that you all can go back and LGTM this. So in essence, this is the overarching, we're going to be releasing 1.0. So Charles and Faye, if you can just go throw an LGTM on this, that would be fantastic, because that checks off that second bucket, that second item. And then what ends up happening, and I already did this once and then deleted the tag just because it was failing the build. We just go and run this. So we're going to assign it and run it with a version. So this will be the V0 or V0 1.0. And then we're just going to push that. And so anybody that has admin privileges to this repository can push that image. And then from there on out, we can continue releases going forward and not actually deleting the tag like I did this morning. And then we'll obviously have to close the issue, and then we'll have to send an announcement to this. I might skip this for this 1.0 just so we can feel out the process, because I'm a little bit hesitant and I want to make sure that like this image fully works. I might push this off a couple days after releasing it fully to be able to test and make sure that, since this is the first time through, we want to make sure that everybody from your side of things can pull it and the image works and nothing's funky.
Yeah, how about the make file? Because I saw I thought you showed a make file with make release builds or something like that.
The release staging stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So can anybody just do this, or they have kind of need to check the account?
You can technically run it. And you can run it against your own things. You can pass in whatever registries you want to be able to push to your own repositories. So if you wanted to do an internal build of this, you could just change registry and run make release or release staging, and that would do it, as long as you change the registry that you're passing into it, or staging registry that you're passing into it. To push to the like Kubernetes owns, the like org owned project, you can't run that from local. That ends up having to be done from Prow.
Mm-hmm.
So for internal, for us, we'll have a job that kicks this off, does a very similar thing, pushes to our own registry. Same, I assume it would be the same for you. And again, I didn't add this in. I have not gone and done what I was originally planning on doing, which is also doing VC at the same time. I didn't want to add that as an extra hoop after realizing how many pieces I had to work out.
Yeah,
adding it into it is very simple. I mean, all I have to do is basically add another line in here to CD into the virtual cluster one and run the releases from there as well. And it will create the images for us. We don't need to do anything in the GCP project. It creates everything and pushes it once you have everything configured properly. So
okay, so now I understand. So this make file basically project needed to do automated the release using, but so if I'm the developer, I just want to release image in my local Docker. So what should I do? So I just change the staging registry to local?
Yeah, well, to whatever you want. So I've done this locally by changing staging registry as like that environment variable to just like my own Docker hub. I've changed it to like Quay, for example, as well. And you just change it to whatever you want and then run make release staging. And that will at least, that will set those things up. Actually, sorry, there's a piece that isn't fully true there. This tag part doesn't work for you unless you're using gcloud. So you could just do the build all and Docker push as well instead.
Yeah, this is probably okay, because I'm more worried about like local debugging. I probably just want to create an image in my local.
Then just run build all, and that will build all the arches for it as well. And you could even just do the individual arch you want to build. Say, for instance, if you're just trying to test on AMD 64, you could just do Docker build dash whichever project you want, or component you want.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah. I mean, as a regular developer, probably this is the most important thing for them to do the local debugging. So to see how to push image to their own So
yeah, which we also documented. Charles wrote this up, which I believe uses these same exact. Yeah. So Charles wrote this up about building locally. So if you go through this flow, this is Cappy. This is creating the Docker images and manifest for hours. Yeah. So if you just run Docker build and then run release manifest, you'll have that image locally that you can then build with. And then you could from there just load it into a kind cluster like we're doing here. And then you could test this. You can test the entire flow out using this doc as well for a developer.
Yep.
I'm pretty stoked. We're making good progress. I'm super stoked to see where we've gotten so far. We're definitely on our way. So
cool. It's very cool. Thanks for working on this. How do you find it? There is a document to explain this?
I was just talking to Vince about this. It's a little bit spread out. You kind of have to like luckily Vince added a bunch of notes into the create. Like I created an issue in here and asked Vince for some help just to get some guidance. And he pointed me to the Google Cloud project or the Cloud Build YAML file that was already in our registry. And then he pointed us to the release targets that are in Cappy. And then from there, he pointed to me to where to go create the project, which you can find readmes once you know where to go, and you can kind of follow that. Like once you're in the test infra repo, you can definitely go find once I'm here, how do I create an image repository? How do I get access to those things? It's just the discovery part was kind of difficult. So I used people, but once you know, you know. So now you all know, and you could potentially go and do this for whatever other projects you all work on. So. Cool. That is the only thing on our agenda today that I saw. Does anybody have anything that they want to bring up, talk about? I think next steps is trying to do some integrations between VC and CapN, which I think we just need somebody committed to it. Yeah. If anybody has time and is interested in looking at that.
Yeah, I can start working on this part, like try to explore how to combine the virtual cluster with what we currently have.
Cool. All right. Do you want me to actually assign that to you?
Yeah.
Cool.
And also, because this week I was still doing something internal training and
sure,
preparing for the ICDC paper presentation. So I do not have much time to work on the KCP and NCP stuff. But yeah, I think I will keep you updated if I got any progress. Yeah.
Sweet. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. So what's actually happening with that paper? You're presenting it soon?
Right. The paper, the conference will happening in July 15 or something. I forgot the exact day, but at that day they will have a virtual conference, and they will play the video I record advance. But I also need to show up and answer some of the questions they may have. Yeah, it's very similar to the virtual KubeCon. Yeah.
Awesome. That's very cool. I didn't even look. Did that, I assume that doc or that paper got copied over. Richard, since there's probably context missing here, I'm going to drop a link into what we're talking about. There's a very fantastic doc that Faye and Charles worked on about the architecture for virtual cluster and how it all works and what we're aiming for in the long run with this project. And what they're all doing internally. Well, a little bit internally. Sweet. All right. What else can we talk about? What's on folks' minds?
Yeah. For multi-cluster, maybe I think the better we have some offline discussion first before to bring out. There are a lot of pieces. I don't want to waste people's time.
Yep. Yeah, you and I need to sync up again about that.
Sometime this week, maybe we can discuss in a more public version next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead,
Fei,
Wei.
I just read your doc you shared last time.
Yeah.
So you now put two options there. I thought you just did one demo for one of the options.
Yeah.
Are you going to implement both of them, or this just put on
No.
table for discussion?
No. The option one, I'm not going to try that because I'm not a super fan for that. So
Okay.
it's just, it's just for just give an alternative. There were pro and cons. So I was focusing more on the scalability side of things. So which concerns me more because the option one looks a little bit simple, but they have some limitations, which I don't like.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Wei,
for scales, like 2 to 3 clusters, less than 100 nodes, you can do that.
Okay.
Cool. Wei, I'll also invite you to that when Faye and I meet about that.
Okay.
Since you've taken a look at it as well. Cool. Richard, is there anything that we can answer for you? Anything that you're interested? You probably pointing at docs is probably the first thing, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that paper's ideal. I guess I'm really interested from we're dealing a lot with telcos, and they have this need to, I guess, virtualize control planes and not waste nodes on whole control planes. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. So yeah, that doc is perfect for me for the time being.
Perfect. Cool.
Thank you.
No, thank you for joining. I'm stoked to have more people checking things out and looking at what we're doing. So, all right, folks. If there's nothing else, I'm gonna call it early and give everybody back 30 minutes, and we could probably coordinate on offline.
I don't know if everyone has joined the last multi-tenancy meeting. So there are lot of people talk about the vCluster thing. Chris, did you join? I didn't see you or not.
Last week's? No, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Just maybe give a quick update because the vCluster thing that open source by Loft, it looks pretty similar to virtual cluster that we have been doing, right? So conceptual wise, we have the same high level design in the sense that each tenant has dedicated control plane. And there is a sinker to put the tenant resource into the superclusters. Architecture-wise, similar implementation, we have differences in the sense that a lot of guys put they don't sync the namespace. So they put all objects from a tenant control plane into one namespace in supercluster. So that's a major, implementation differences, and which actually like a blocker if you're trying to combine these two things, because this is a fundamental. So if we want to implement a sinker that can support both, the sinker will look pretty complicated and hard to maintain. So we were talking about this kind of implementation choices. In the meeting, I think Lucas, the CTO, the CEO of the Loft company, explained the underlying motivation of why they do this. But now I can see a kind of differences in the sense that in Loft model, the tenant actually has the permission to access the supercluster. So actually they want to have a self-managed VC scenario, which means the VC CR is created by tenant. So in our case, it's like VC CR is managed by the cluster administrator, right? It's just a cluster administrator bring up the VC instance, and what the tenant can get is a virtual tenant control plane, and that's it. So tenant is supposed not to access supercluster at all. So in our world, but in Loft model is in other way around. It's like a tenant already can access the supercluster and using namespace kind of thing already. Now tenant itself want to bring up a virtual control plane for himself, which looks a little bit, weird in my kind of sense, but in their production model, they have this requirement. And now I can see why they're trying to combine everything into one namespace, because if the tenant has a right to access a supercluster, they don't want to see tons of namespace already sitting there. So they want to have a simple way to start a virtual cluster and a simple way to do the cleanup, in the sense that everything in the one namespace that you can do the cleanup. So now I can see some rationale behind their implementation. So in the meeting, so my suggestion is that, okay, your scenario fits your business model. I don't argue that it's right or wrong. It's like your choice. But I really don't think these two things should be combined. So if you want to have a single namespace syncer, then do as you want. So just in the document, we probably have to state more detail. So now everybody will think of V cluster and VC, they are the same. Yes, they are same, but the initial motivation are kind of, or the scenario or the working story and the user story is kind of different. We are more towards kind of a service experience, in the sense of we trying to hide the details of the nodes topology and the cluster. So they may come from different angles, like a user which is already using a namespace style software multi-tenancy, and they want to promote themselves to a higher level. Then they try to start a VC, which is called a V cluster. It's just maybe we need to have, as Chris had said, this is a very big space. So every solution, it has to be a little bit narrowed down to get rid of some conditions, say, this is the focus.
That's really interesting. So, yeah, so basically, like, I mean, what you're getting at is like, if you run a namespace as a service, you could just kind of drop this into your environment, and customers could, or not customers, the tenants of the cluster could go and use any of those higher level functions that in essence we're trying to enable, which is like CRDs and okay, interesting. And how do they deal with, like, I guess from that side of things, they don't really care about the security model of multiple namespaces and trying to use that as an isolation. Okay, how do nodes work in the cluster? What actually do things get synced like our virtual node object? Okay.
No, they bring up all nodes up.
Oh, so all nodes from the supercluster end up in your. So if you have a really large cluster, all of those tenant clusters end up looking really large too.
Apparently, I mean, they are running a startup, so they won't have a super large clusters. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And this is the only. I'm asking the first question is the node. How do you expose the node? So this is always a confusing thing. I mean, they don't do the things like we did. So we are more towards like everything is kind of service model. So we will have a virtual node, and we will even GC the virtual node. So if you run us, you don't have node in the virtual cluster. So they don't do this model because they apparently they try to. So think about it. Since tenant already have access to supercluster, so they already know everything, including the nodes. So you don't need to hide anything because you can't hide anything. So then they're more towards just because of that model. So people will think, oh, okay, I own some of the node. They will have exactly requests. They want to run daemon set. They want to run daemon set. So if you want to run daemon set, then you have to push everything up.
Interesting. Okay. All right. That's an interesting model. Yeah, there's definitely some. So takeaway from that, do you think that we need to do write an issue, write a doc potentially that kind of like draws out some of these things or clearly defines what we're trying to go through? Or
I think it's optional to our side, but what I was hoping is for Lucas' side, if anything, they want to write. So please, stay clearly what's the difference here now. So if in the sense that we don't want to combine, because I don't think our model, we are treating kind of high level, they are the same, but we have some differences in the usage model. You can see that, right? So it's one is if the tenant have access to supercluster, then a lot of our assumption is broken. So because we are claiming the security, high level isolation, but if you already can access supercluster, then that part is gone.
For sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's put that in the back of our minds in case we eventually do want to do that, because that might be something that's useful. Just be like, we're clearly drawing. I mean, you already had like from the README on the virtual cluster directory within the repo, it definitely has a lot of that stuff drawn out. Maybe, yeah, it might be useful at some point to at least clearly draw it out in case, because we're going to get that question. I mean, we've already had people write articles like the new stack article that was about vCluster versus virtual cluster. And it's like, okay, we probably want to make that as clear as possible in case more things like that.
The missing part, right? If you look at the README, everything want to try that out. So all the things that we are talking about, they don't even need to think about that. They don't even think about that problem. They only think about functionality from functionality perspective. they are similar.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm glad that you went. I missed that meeting.
Yeah. So I just want to let everybody knows in case people ask this kind of type of questions, because we will get this type of questions. So unless we say very clear, either in their repo, in our repo, but I don't know if you really want to do that, but someone somewhere need to clear difference, say the differences. I know that the difference is not in the technology. The difference is not in how the synchron is implemented. It's usage model. It's how do you use this entire thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it seems like where we're talking about the long term and like what you're doing with the schedulers and things like that, like that even takes it even farther. It basically kind of like draws that line even harder of this won't, like I can't, maybe I'm missing it right now, but in my mind, in what I'm noodling right now is I can't figure out how that model would fit into what we're trying to do with that, with the like schedulers model and multiple Kubernetes clusters and really distributing above, like one layer above Kubernetes itself. So cool. Awesome. Thanks for giving that background. I'm assuming there's a recording from that as well, if anybody wants to go check it out.
There is one, and Tasha pushed that one, I think. Yeah,
Sweet.
People want to see that discussion. So
yeah, I definitely going to go back and watch that now.
it's pretty interesting. So now I understand the motivation. So previously, I really don't understand why they want to combine everything in one namespace and they stick to it. It seems that their business model requires that. So
yeah, I mean, coming from the Loft world and or like from what they're trying to do at the base layer, that's just one feature of their platform. So that it does make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting model. I mean, a lot of folks that I know are doing namespace as a service as an offering model. And if they're just trying to fit this in and say, oh, I just want the ability to deploy CRDs, I don't want this other high level functions, I could totally see that being a reasonable solution for this. I think that's really awesome.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
all right.
My side. So.
Cool. Anyone else want to bring any last things up?
Okay.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna call it, and I'll see y'all next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.